how did you handle town hall meetings when Tea Partiers interrupted the town hall meetings? With the same level of dismissiveness? Or did you handle it with the sense that, what's going on here, these angry people? Who are these angry people?
Well, my coverage of that was about it being organized.
Okay.
Yeah.
But again, that is, your coverage of it was to delegitimize it. That it was actually not real, it was AstroTurf.
No, actually no. It was, I think my approach to that was to say this is being used as a widespread political tactic by people with a lot of money and a lot of stake in the policy issues, and they're sort of deploying direct action activists in a way that we haven't seen before.
Would you say that the general spirit of the block of coverage on MSNBC was as dismissive of the woman who stands up and says Bush is a war criminal? Do you think MSNBC has changed over the last 5 years? You know, there is a genetic linkage between Keith. Keith was the first, and it was a voice like in the wilderness. People were like, what?
Yeah.
Oh my God, you can say that, you know. And then you came on and Ed, and again, now I'm talking about climate as opposed to weather. But it does create a linkage that I think it would be hard for you to say, like, geez, I don't know if we're really doing that.
Last time, we shared a video of Jon Stewart dismantling Rachel Maddow, Nicole Wallace, and Joe Scarborough over their Trump derangement syndrome, only to see them double down without learning a single lesson. But listen to this. It didn't take long for Stewart to swoop in once again with another classic takedown. If you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, now's the perfect time, so let's dive right in. Keep in mind, this clip is a bit old and might just catch you off guard.
We've all bought into that the conflict in this country is left and right. Liberal, conservative, red, blue. And all the news networks have bought into that. CNN sort of started it. They had this idea that, you know, the fight in Washington is Republicans and Democrats. So why don't we isolate that, and we'll stand back here, and that's, you know, Democrats and Republicans will go at it. Red and blue staters will go at it. And what it does is it amplifies a division that I actually don't think is the right fight. But if what you're asking me is, do I believe that? What he's saying, that's what I believe? No.
Back in the day, Jon Stewart was a vocal and unapologetic liberal, a true champion of progressive causes. But even he could see the writing on the wall. He recognized that networks like MSNBC and CNN, under the guidance of figures like Rachel Maddow, were steering the country down a dangerous path. But listen to this. Instead of serving as a unifying force that could bridge America's growing ideological divide, these outlets doubled down on tribalism, feeding their audiences a relentless diet of outrage and confirmation bias. Media, which once held the potential to foster civil discourse and even unite a divided nation, had transformed into yet another weapon in the partisan arsenal. Now just look around. We become a nation entrenched in political tribes, where debate is stifled and distrust reigns. What was once a warning has all too quickly become our stark reality.
But what I do believe is both sides have their way of shutting down debate. And the news networks have allowed these two sides to become the fight in the country. And I think the fight in the country is corruption versus not corruption. Extremists versus regular. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, but what's the lefty way of shutting down? Well, I mean,
Okay, you've said Bush is a war criminal. Now that may be technically true. In my world, war criminal is Pol Pot or the Nuremberg trials.
Or Harry
It's not
Truman,
saying
but
he's,
then you took that back.
Yeah. And I did for good reason, because I don't think he was. And I think that, you know, again, we have to define our terms. But I think that's such an incendiary charge that when you put it into conversation as, well, technically he is, that may be right, but it feels like a conversation stopper, not a conversation starter.
I completely echo Jon Stewart's sentiment. Too often, Democrats shut down genuine dialogue and legitimate debate by resorting to name-calling and public shaming. But listen to this. Instead of tackling uncomfortable topics with thoughtful discussion, when someone raises concerns about America's involvement in the Middle East, they're met with personal attacks and an air of moral superiority. The trend carries over to Donald Trump as well. Bring up any of his policies, be it regarding immigration, the economy, or foreign affairs, and suddenly you're labeled a racist, bitter, or a narcissist. There's simply no room for nuance or disagreement, just a knee-jerk reaction meant to silence and discredit, which is not only intellectually dishonest, but also toxic to a functioning democracy.
I follow your logic and I believe what you're saying up until a point. And
I'm glad somebody's following.
No, I do follow your logic. But it's,
right.
I mean, the people interrupting meetings and interrupting rallies are direct action activists who are doing stuff to be purposely disruptive and a pain in order to sort of throw a wrench in the works.
Right.
And then on the other side,
so you're saying that it's really nothing.
Well, it's not that it's nothing. It's just not being done with the same level of authority as it is on the right.
You see just how sneaky Rachel Maddow can be. One moment she's defending the so-called woke warriors, those who disrupt public meetings and harass everyday people in the name of a grand political message. But listen to this. The moment Jon Stewart challenges her by questioning whether such behavior is productive or even acceptable, she pivots. Suddenly, it's no longer framed as a left-wing issue. Instead, she claims it predominantly occurs on the right. It's a classic deflection, staggering in its hypocrisy. Rather than taking accountability or acknowledging the extremism brewing on her own side, she shifts the blame to preserve her narrative. This calculated move reeks of partisanship and intellectual dishonesty. And it's precisely the kind of evasive rhetoric that fuels division instead of solving real problems.
You're saying it's both sides, isn't it?
Well,
there is no doubt.
There's no misinformation.
There's some disinformation from the left, but comparing it to what Donald Trump spews out every day, every week, comparing it to what Elon Musk is spewing out, unfortunately, on X, there's no...
You were like, Bill, how can you, Mr. False Equivalency? It's like, no, Joe, come on. I thought you were Joe Scarborough. There's crazy on both sides.
I'll never forget when Scarborough used the same tactic with Bill Maher. At this point, one can't help but wonder if MSNBC is handing out a playbook to its on-air personalities. Both Rachel Maddow and Joe Scarborough seem to follow the exact same script. They deflect and downplay anything that casts the left in a negative light, while obsessively magnifying every misstep or controversy coming from the right. But listen to this. If there's disinformation, extremism, or hypocrisy on the left, the strategy is to either ignore it completely or brush it off as a minor blip. However, when these issues originate from the right, they instantly become front-page news, treated as if they were national crises. Every detail is scrutinized, every narrative pushed to an extreme. There's no real balance or honest comparison. Just a relentless effort to protect ideological allies while vilifying opponents. It's not journalism, it's propaganda wrapped in a polished smile. So naturally, Jon Stewart had to call them out.
How did you handle town hall meetings when Tea Partiers interrupted the town hall meetings? With the same level of dismissiveness? Or did you handle it with the sense that, what's going on here, these angry people? Who are these angry people?
Well, my coverage of that was about it being organized.
Okay.
Yeah.
But again, that is, your coverage of it was to delegitimize it. That it was actually not real. It was AstroTurf.
No, actually no. It was, I think my approach to that was to say this is being used as a widespread political tactic by people with a lot of money and a lot of stake in the policy issues. And they're sort of deploying direct action activists in a way that we haven't seen before.
Would you say that the general spirit of the block of coverage on MSNBC was as dismissive of the woman who stands up and says Bush is a war criminal, or the people at the town hall? Do you think that they were viewed through the same prism?
I think that they were viewed through an appropriately proportional prism, because I think Code Pink is like 12 ladies, and I think that literally half of Indiana says they identify with the Tea Party. And so,
but again, they say they identify with the Tea Party. What does that mean? Yeah. Identify how? Identify with the idea that they like smaller government, or identify with yelling in a town hall?
I really appreciate how Jon Stewart is pressing Rachel Maddow in this moment. You can actually see the smile fading from her face as she starts to squirm under the weight of his pointed questions. Subtle, yet undeniably telling. But listen to this. If you're a bit lost on what's happening here, let me break it down. Stewart is asking Maddow a very direct question. Why did MSNBC lavish so much coverage on a woman who interrupted former President George W. Bush's speech by calling him a war criminal, yet offer little attention when Tea Partiers disrupted Democratic events using similar tactics? Stewart isn't merely nitpicking the coverage. He's making a larger, crucial point. He's exposing the clear partisan bias in mainstream media and demonstrating how selective outrage contributes to the growing political divide in this country. When networks amplify dissent on one side while ignoring or demonizing it on the other, they're not just reporting the news, they're actively shaping public perception. And to his credit, Stewart is calling that out in real time, showing that the media doesn't just reflect division, it often fuels it.
If the argument is, you do exactly what Fox do and you're as bad as Fox, anybody who has watched our show in any measure would understand the special place in our hearts for Fox.
Yeah.
So again, it feels to me like false equivalence sounds like something that you're doing as well. We have a tendency to grant amnesty to people that we agree with and to overly demonize people we don't.
Let's keep the clip rolling. And that's exactly right. Because MSNBC consistently aligns itself with the political left, it tends to echo and defend most progressive positions while reflexively demonizing anything that originates from the right. But listen to this. The double standard is blatant. Time and time again, we've seen Republicans propose ideas that mirror those of the Democrats, only to have them harshly criticized, mocked, or dismissed by left-leaning media. Take criminal justice reform, for instance. When President Trump signed the First Step Act, a bipartisan effort aimed at reducing recidivism and reforming sentencing laws, it received only lukewarm acknowledgement at best, despite representing a progressive cause that had long been championed. Meanwhile, similar reforms under Obama were widely celebrated. Or consider border security. Democrats like Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and even Joe Biden once supported physical barriers and tougher border policies, but when Trump echoed those same sentiments, he was branded a xenophobe and racist. Even on infrastructure spending, Trump proposed multi-trillion-dollar packages similar to Democratic plans, yet media outlets framed his approach as reckless or unserious. The point is clear. It's not always about the policy. It's about who's proposing it. If it comes from the left, it's visionary. If it comes from the right, it's dangerous.
There's a lot of people on the right who have made this decision that they'll only talk to media who agrees with them.
That's their greatest triumph.
Yeah. And that's new. I think they're only able to do that now because the conservative media is big enough that they can still use it to get their voice out.
You know, I don't think that's a new concept. I don't think that's a Republican or right-wing concept. I think they've executed it pretty well. I'd say Bill Clinton was pretty good at delegitimizing. The great thing that they've done, I think the brilliance of Fox is they've delegitimized the idea of editorial authority while exercising incredible editorial authority,
right?
Which is, it's amazing. And they also have the game that they're all out to get us. So any criticism of them can be filtered through the idea that it's persecution. It's not. This isn't criticism, it's persecution.
This kind of selective framing fuels tribalism, discourages debate, and reinforces the very division that media figures claim to lament. But listen to this. What happens when Maddow tries to flip the script? You could tell she was eagerly waiting for Jon Stewart to launch into a classic takedown of the right. Especially Fox News. That was her expectation, perhaps even what she was counting on. But Stewart wasn't playing along. He wasn't in the mood for partisan potshots or easy applause lines. And instead, he did something unexpected. He gave credit where it was due and recognized the strategic brilliance of what the Republicans had done. While the left dominated mainstream airwaves and built echo chambers of affirmation, the right found its voice through alternative platforms, grassroots movements, and direct messaging. Stewart saw that as a political masterstroke, not something to mock, but rather a tactic to learn from. He praised Republicans for refusing to stay silent and for pushing back even when the media landscape seemed stacked against them. It was a moment of brutal honesty that clearly caught Maddow off guard.
Do you think MSNBC has changed over the last 5 years? You know, there is a genetic linkage between Keith. Keith was the first, and it was a voice like in the wilderness. People were like, what?
Yeah.
Oh my God, you can say that, you know. And then you came on and Ed, and again, now I'm talking about climate as opposed to weather. But
yeah,
it does create a linkage that I think it would be hard for you to say, like, geez, I don't know if we're really doing that. then what are you doing?
I think what happened is that I think the media, having been derided for so long as being liberal and biased and being very afraid of that charge, when Keith spoke out the way he did, he essentially came out of the closet as a liberal, and it nothing bad happened. It was okay. He grew his audience, if anything. And so I think it gave network executives some courage to say, okay, people who are liberals can be on TV as long as they call themselves liberals.
See, I think that
and then they
the
hire
idea
the
that
rest
network
of us.
executives work on courage is, I think what they did is they went, why is Fox News kicking our asses? We need to fight this with a similar or sensational.
Stewart then delivered the final nail in the coffin with a brutal takedown. He revealed that ADO had proudly claimed that network executives at MSNBC had empowered their journalists and hosts to express their political and ideological stances freely. A narrative that sounded noble on the surface, like a celebration of authenticity and intellectual independence. But listen to this, Stewart wasn't buying it. With surgical precision, he dismantled that narrative. He exposed the truth. MSNBC didn't encourage open ideological expression out of some high-minded devotion to free speech. Instead, they were crafting a weapon, an aggressive counterforce to Fox News. Stewart made it clear that what Maddow was glossing over was not journalistic freedom, but a calculated corporate strategy aimed at building a partisan machine. His calm, matter-of-fact delivery only made his point more powerful as he peeled back the curtain on the true nature of the network's approach. In the end, Jon Stewart didn't just challenge Rachel Maddow, he exposed the media's role in deepening America's political divide. But listen to this, while MSNBC claims to champion free expression, Stewart revealed that it's a calculated effort designed to rival Fox News. His takedown was a rare moment of honesty in an environment dominated by spin, reminding us that media bias isn't just about what is said, it's about why, how, and ultimately who stands to benefit. With that, we draw the curtains on today's video. If you enjoyed our commentary, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.